I'm thrilled to be joined by Ricky Joshi, co-founder of Saatva mattresses.
I think in e-commerce you have to be good at a lot of things. There's AI that helps you inform decisions and work better on a daily basis. We're 100% doing that. Another level of AI, which we have not implemented, which is just integrate AI into your entire system.
In terms of like North Star metrics that you're looking at today to help you identify if a market is working or if a store is working, what really matters? What should they be looking at?
The cost of the real estate's important, and then just overall lift within the region.
What's one brand today that you look to and you'd be like, they're really doing it right?
For the history of time, I've always found Warby Parker to honestly be an exceptional brand. I think that they do a fantastic integration of retail and web.
For anyone who's running a brand who's listening along right now, who's thinking about opening up retail, what advice would you have for them?
I think that when you have
Really excited to be here, coming to you live from right outside of viewing room for Saatva, where I'm about to sit down with one of Saatva's co-founders, Ricky Joshi, who's going to tell me all about some of the secrets and lessons that they learned along the way to creating a category-defining, iconic sleep company.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Brilliant Commerce Podcast, where I get a chance to sit down with some of the brightest minds behind what I like to call iconic or next to be iconic brands. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Ricky Joshi, co-founder of Saatva mattresses. Normally, Ricky, I would ask you where I'm finding you today, but you were gracious enough to open up your doors and host us here in Austin in one of your flagship stores. So this is a wonderful place to be recording a podcast, having a conversation with you. So yeah, thanks a bunch.
Yeah, happy to be here and excited to do it in the store. A great way to kind of, I guess, bring it all together.
Yeah, it feels great. It feels like we're sort of in your living room having a natural conversation. Had a little bit of a warm up before, and I think you've got a really fascinating background, and it'll be interesting to dive in here. Tell me a little bit about yourself. So, the brand's been around since 2011, but you've been involved in commerce since back then, since before that. So it's kind of one of the OGs. A little bit like me. So yeah, what brought you to Saatva and where have you come from?
Started off in the ad agency world. So really quickly realized that I didn't want to be working for other people. I think that like a lot of other founders, started my own ad agency. I realized I just had basically created a job for myself. Started dabbling with e-commerce kind of as a practice within my own agency. Started doing AdWords on behalf of e-commerce brands. And then really started to think, what can we do? Inadvertently, I actually met my co-founder, Ron, who was running a company called Jennifer Furniture at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty interesting. I actually went to go pitch Ron and how I could help improve Jennifer, and he came to me and said, actually, I want to get into the mattress category. And I went home and I thought, this is interesting, and I looked at the websites of our competitors, or would-be competitors, and just kind of still very old school, not a lot of value. The websites weren't that interesting. Experience wasn't that much better. And I thought, hey, this is actually a real opportunity. There's an opportunity to do something really interesting and disruptive. I called our other co-founder, Chris, that night and said, I think we should do this. When we started Saatva, the idea was pretty simple. We wanted to sort of reinvent the mattress category by bringing incredibly high quality, good for you product to the consumer, and that's how we started, and we haven't stopped since.
I love the good for the consumer angle. I think that's fascinating. We didn't talk about this before, but my background is also agency. It's like an incredible school to ultimately get into this, and we had started in the late 90s, and it was kind of the same thing. And I remember even before e-com, it was this idea of sort of catalog commerce, and these websites were pretty nascent in their explanation of products, but then ultimately customers would have to go into store. So I imagine when you were doing some of that research, it must have been like the late 2000s, 2010s. There couldn't have been too many wonderful examples of, direct-to-consumer wasn't even a thing yet. Trip down memory lane, what were you looking at?
By the way, I'm so glad someone came up with the word direct-to-consumer. I think that might have happened around 2017 or 18, because I was always trying to explain what kind of brand we were, and we weren't a traditional e-commerce company, and it was always difficult to kind of sort of enter the zeitgeist in a way that was easy to explain, and I guess direct-to-consumer really stuck. What was interesting is there were not a lot of brands to sort of piggyback off of. So Bonobos is probably the only one.
Yeah, they're like 2012 vintage, I think. 2012,
no, earlier, 2006, 2007. Okay. Yeah, so they're probably the original, but still a little bit of a catalog sort of experience. I think one thing that we did, which is really unique, is we really an immersive experience around one product. We really only had one product. from 2011 until 2014. And so, really getting deep into what that product is, explaining the product, getting into details, showing videos, all of those things. Really, we were one of the first brands to ever do that. One of the first brands to ever offer an in-home trial. There are a lot of brands out there that have done an amazing job, but I think what's fun about this is I think we were very early in inventing sort of the whole direct-to-consumer retail revolution movement.
And using the channel the right way. Like I don't use the term iconic brand sort of cheaply. And so I think if you think about the first move into e-commerce, it was sort of like, how do I make this catalog available to customers online? But it wasn't necessarily accretive to the brand necessarily. But when I think about the way, you brought up Bonobos. Bonobos was like, how do we introduce the brand to the consumer? How do we make them a part of the purchase? How do we make them a part of the brand? How do we do that brand storytelling? It would seem to me that was a really big part of what it took to launch Saatva. And the reason that you're still around 14 or 15 years later, the reason we're sitting in this beautiful showroom is because you didn't just create a catalog experience, you created a brand by leveraging the channel. So given an opportunity to do it again, like what would you do the same? What would you do differently?
I think at the end of the day, where we are today is such a great place. I love the way the brand looks and feels. I love the way that everything from our physical retail experiences to the way that we run customer service to the way that our web experience works. It's evolved a lot over the years, but I think I love where we are. If I had to go back in time, I would have probably done PR a little earlier.
Okay.
We were doing a lot of innovative things really early on. And I think we let some other brands come in and sort of, particularly in our category, sort of own the innovation piece of it and just sort of like basically stamp themselves as the originators of the category. I think it's been a tortoise and hare kind of run though. They kind of came in, sprinted and flailed out a little bit. And we have just kind of been pressing and doing all the right things for a very long time. So again, I think we're in an amazing place, and I wouldn't trade where we are. But there are a couple of things I would tweak.
You talked about that when I first came in. This notion of there was that moment in time. It was like the mattress wars, and yet you all remained like quite disciplined. There was obviously like this focus on the product, not just how do I acquire customers faster and cheaper. How do I make sure that the brand is resonating and that we're ultimately meeting customers where they are. Maybe some lessons that you learned along the way in sort of like staying disciplined when there was just like a bunch of capital available to acquire customers. How do you build those healthy habits that help you get to where you are today?
Quite frankly, not raising venture capital. There were times I wish that we had. I see, Casper, some of our competitors running around raising tons of money, putting themselves all over billboards in New York City and taxi cabs and
subways.
And I'm running around and this for a few years, aren't you just like Casper? it still happens. But the reality is, I think because we never did that and we were bootstrapped until 2018 when we did private equity, it really, we had to be a cash flow positive business. And it made us disciplined. And I think natively, just our founding team is also just geared that way. I'm a scrappy founder, for better or for worse. I've always been an entrepreneur, or at least had an entrepreneurial mindset. So, just kind of throwing money around never really made a lot of sense to me. And I've always just kind of really believed in unit economics. And, you have to make something work at a small scale to make it happen on a bigger scale. So it really kind of created this data-driven discipline where we had a relatively small team here in Austin, Texas on the e-com side. At one point we were almost a $200 million company. It was like a 14-person e-com team. And Casper's running around with probably a couple hundred employees doing the same work as less than 15 people. So I think that discipline has been part of our DNA from the beginning. Now, as we've grown as a brand, we're doing things that are, I would think, spending money on brand awareness, investing in areas that are maybe a little more not as performance driven, not as innately ROI driven, but at this point in our history, it makes a lot of sense because we have the scale and we're big enough, we have the stores, so we can start to do those things. But discipline is still a very core part of our DNA.
I love that. It was like the forced discipline by not raising the venture dollars instills these really good habits, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not making big bets. I look at this retail presence and this is clearly a big bet. And I want to come back to the performance piece too, because there's a lot to unpack there. And you're definitely one of the experts in the space, but I want to keep us in retail for just a sec.
Sure.
When did so the brand launched officially in 2011, digitally native, direct to consumer only. when was the first foray into retail?
So retail, it took us a while. So retail happened in 2019.
Okay.
Was our first store in New York City.
Wow.
3,300 square feet. But
Big bet.
and then yeah, big bet. And then right as that happens, COVID strikes like 4 months later.
Yeah.
And New York City is not exactly a place, that was an easy place to be handling COVID. But at the end of the day, the store did fantastic. Again, we are entrepreneurial. I think that's something that is really important. Data driven, methodical, but entrepreneurial, and making those big bets is critical. And we realize that, number one, the store is working fantastically well. Number two, there's so many customers who still want to be able to touch and feel product. Yeah. And who we are as a brand, as an ethos, translates really, really well to retail. So it was actually an amazing time to make some bets. Rents were low. People were thinking that physical retail was over. What an awesome time to go in and sign a bunch of leases. And we did it for, with great deals and great locations. And that, I think, was really powerful in that it cemented us in these great locations. Newbury Street in Boston, one of our earliest stores, 14th and R in DC, WeHo, Melrose in LA.
These are D2C alleys, and you get the anchor tenants
and we just
there.
anchored, and then all of a sudden, the rest of everything else became easy from there because we did phenomenally well in these places. So great time to make a bet, and we made some bets, and they worked.
But this isn't just a store. What's the term we use for it? This is a
viewing room.
A viewing room, yeah. Help me understand how you were thinking about retail differently. Like, is it fair to say even back in 2019 you didn't say, okay, we're going to open up a store, we're going to have just a retail footprint? Like, were you already thinking about the in real life differently as part of the brand pillar?
We really wanted the store to be an extension of our web experience.
Yeah.
So that meant a seamless experience between the two. In fact, our web experience is next to every single bed.
Yeah, I thought that was super cool walking in
You
here.
could go on and right there, that bed will be featured and focused on.
Yeah.
And the seamlessness between retail and our web experience, I think, is very unique and different. So when you come in, I don't think there's a store out there when you come into physical retail that feels like such an embodiment of the website. You go look at on the walls and there's the same imagery. I think that was a really important thing. From a customer service perspective, we also realized early on that our employees, our customer service employees, were actually outperforming when they were working from home. And we realized that having a bunch of customer service employees in one dedicated place is actually not as important as I think people thought it was. So what we did is we actually made our retail locations customer service centers. So as the brand has grown, there's buzz in the store, and those employees are either on the phone and operating as CSRs, or they're helping customers in person. But it's helped the brand grow without being a huge cost center. And so retail's been kind of an anchor.
I mean, I think it's that willingness to do things a little bit differently. And maybe it is rooted in the discipline. You didn't reinvent a tech stack for the mobile stands that are sitting beside the mattresses and now the furniture. It is an extension of the website. It just works. I mean, I think that it is perhaps counterintuitive to have a CX team sitting within the retail store, but it brings that human presence. So I think the ability to capitalize on the assets you have feels like it's really been a really big part of the brand that you have today.
100%. It just feels so integrated, and it has been. It works. And having customer service, for example, it not only is cost effective, it makes better customer service reps because they're dealing with the product physically. So when they're on the phone, they can say, hey, by the way, check out your nearest store, and I'm touching it right now, and this is how it feels.
And it's got to be really neat if I'm helping customers out to be able to watch real customers walking around and touching and feeling the product, to really be immersed in it all. Like, that feels empowering to me.
100%, and their customer service reps who are in store are performing better than the ones who aren't in store. So
it's nice to be able to give them a place to go to work too.
100%, really cool. And it anchors kind of community. Every store is its own little community because of that, because we have more employees locally.
Sure. It was one of my favorite parts, and I still look back on the Glossier days really fondly. The retail experience that brand was able to deliver, like, so much of that was community driven. The customers that were lining up outside or were in the store, they were really creating the sense of community. And if you worked there, you were part of that community too. And I think when you ask people about the feeling they have with the brand, so much of it is like, do you love the product? Yes. But do I love every aspect of every touch point of that brand? Like, that really matters. Okay, so retail, definitely, You waited 7+ years before doing it. For anyone who's running a brand, who's listening along right now, who's thinking about opening up retail that is maybe exclusively digital right now, or maybe even exclusively wholesale, what advice would you have for them in terms of looking for that first place, that anchor store, that anchor community center, if you will? When would you tell them is the right time to do it?
I think that when you have critical mass in any sort of geography, and you feel like people do want to touch and feel the product, and there's an opportunity to raise your profile within a geography, I think each store actually is a marketing anchor for its region as well. So because I have a store in Austin, because I now can address 100% of customers, whether it's in person, over the phone, or on the website, I'm more efficient now in Austin. My conversion rate is higher. It means I can spend more in Austin. So we use our stores as marketing anchors. And I think that that's another thing that is kind of special about the business. And integrating those two things, retail and marketing, I think is really special. And it allows us to do some stuff that we wouldn't normally do, like direct TV locally, things like that. That might be a little more expensive, but again, start to make sense when you have a higher conversion rate. In fact, where we have a store, our conversion rate's about 80% higher.
Okay.
So that, I think, is a pretty big stat. Also, in addition to that, follow the revenue. The first ones are easy, right? So the first 10 or 15, I mean, for us, it was pretty natural to see where they would go. I'd also say one thing that is really kind of important is looking at conversion rate as well. There's certain places. We know Denver. We finally had a store in Denver. It took us a long time to get in Denver, and we finally have a store in Denver, and I'm so excited about it. And out of the gate, just the first week, I think it's a top 10 store, which never happens. But we know our conversion rate in Denver is through the roof, and we were just kind of happy to cater to that. The other thing is really interesting is just kind of really thinking through who your customer is. We found that being in, places where there's traffic in retail corridors is a lot more effective than, for example, being a lone store out in the middle of nowhere. So, or even sometimes downtown urban centers. So those haven't worked as well for us, just because, people go to work and they go home, but they're not necessarily shopping when they're in a downtown urban center. And so we've kind of shifted away from outside of a New York City or some of the more residential urban centers. We kind of shifted away from that strategy.
We didn't set you up for the segue, but you kind of brought me to it. You're throwing out terms like conversion rate. I've heard you talk an awful lot about MER in terms of like North Star metrics that you're looking at today to help you identify if a market is working or if a store is working. What are your North Star metrics, or what advice would you have for other operators? Like, what really matters? What should they be looking at?
Honestly, 4-wall numbers still mean a lot. So if we're producing within 4 walls, it's important. The cost of the real estate's important. I think that's also something that can't be overlooked. I mean, one thing that's interesting is, and I think that is kind of interesting to me as we embarked on this, is Columbus, Ohio is not necessarily cheaper than parts of LA. New York City might be actually cheaper than Nashville. And so being really smart about, the actual economics of the store. And again, as I mentioned, we're a disciplined brand, so we look at everything and we look at those numbers, we look at payback periods. But 4-wall revenue is huge, and then just overall lift within the region. And I think a lot of retailers do look at that, but we've seen, a tremendous increase where we do have a store.
So how did the move to retail, in terms of like how data focused you all were, is it the same data stack? You now have more data. How did it sort of affect the way that you think about spend? So, we talked about performance before, which is very much like, I know exactly where that customer came from. I know exactly how much they cost, and I can predict what their revenue is going to be with my brand over the next couple of years. But now with these stores, and you think about this investment, and you think about the spend and the geographical lift, do you measure that differently? And do you think about like how you're allocating spend more holistically around brand? And are you shifting your focus away from like pure performance-based marketing?
So overall as a brand, we've shifted. And I think as we have more of a retail footprint and our conversion rate is increasing across the country, we've been able to sort of diversify. Brand lift is something we just felt like it was our moment to do that. So, we're an Olympic sponsor, for example. We're doing national television. All friends will always call me up and say, I saw you guys
Yeah.
on, an NFL game.
That's got to feel good,
yeah,
right?
it's great, right?
Yeah.
And that's stuff that we wouldn't have done like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But the brands hit that zenith where we can do those sorts of things. And because we have high conversion rate, because we have 30 stores, we know that it'll be effective from a cost perspective. We've always kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, scale up a little bit in this direction, then you scale up in this direction. So our brand awareness efforts have coincided with our store expansion pretty much in sync. And so we're still embarking on another 15 stores next year. Our stores are producing some of the highest square dollars per foot in retail.
Yeah.
I think our top grossing store will clear $10 million.
Yeah.
So the viewing room in Paramus, New Jersey, is just absolutely
I love viewing room.
doing great. So and all over the country, we've just seen some fantastic numbers. So
it's these strategic bets. You're measuring it. You're seeing where you're getting results, and then you're pouring more fuel on the fire.
Yeah, and then we'll spend more once we see performance in a local area. We know that the minute that we get a viewing room into a market, it allows us to spend more in that market.
Have you found that the grass is greener on like the more marketing, MarTech side of things, or new technology, or is it like there's the challenges exist whether you're have achieved a certain amount of scale or you're just starting off?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in some ways it's so much easier today to start a e-commerce brand or a direct-to-consumer brand. Shopify has made it incredibly easy and cost-effective to launch great web experiences. Klaviyo has made it easy to have very, very seamless and integrated email marketing.
Yep.
There's so much more technology and tools. Back when we started off, 2011, there were much fewer choices and there were very expensive choices if you wanted.
They took forever to implement.
And it took forever. It was massive legacy systems.
Yeah.
And now we're living in a much leaner, faster world. So that's really fantastic. The marketing challenges are still there, but we're doing a great job with them.
Cool.
But with the new brand, but I think overall, I'd say much easier on parts of MarTech, much easier in terms of web and e-com. A little more, it's as challenging or similar on just pure marketing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, marketing is still marketing. Like
marketing is still marketing.
Eyeballs never been more expensive.
Exactly.
Never been more distracted.
It's 100%.
Yeah.
That's not become easier at all.
Speaking of sort of like marketing and reaching people and maybe like how fast you can go, I had a ton of fun reading through some of the reviews on the Saatva site. Like it's clear that your customers love you. And then as I started to just do some search, like some SEO, I started to see you all everywhere. And like that content was there. The content that lives in those reviews, which is hard earned and takes time, is showing up. And I would imagine that that's been an important part of your SEO strategy. And I waited sort of 30 minutes for us to actually talk about AI, but I would be curious how you've seen those hard earned results that you've achieved with reviews that have been a part of the success story, as I understand, authentically, because people love the product, but how that's actually helped you get ready for the next wave that everyone's excited about in terms of agentic commerce.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting is I remember, a long time ago, Google's kind of shifted a little bit and gaming SEO became less important than just providing a lot of great content. And we
remember
were there.
All those like hidden pages. Like, it never felt right. I'm going to bury all of these things. Like, how about we just produce good content?
Backlinking strategies and this and that. And I think they really cleaned up their act probably about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then they just said, just do good things.
Yeah.
It'll work out. And I think we were already doing those things. So we've been doing those things for a very long time. And AI is just, another level to that. So, the AI it's going through Reddit, it's going through reviews, it's crawling the internet. And inadvertently, Saatva is everywhere at this point. And we, with good intention, that's what our plan was all along. We want to provide exceptional experience, exceptional product. And we love when people talk about us. And for that reason, AI has actually been an incredible asset in a lot of ways. So it's been, we show up, I think, often and show up very well. If I did an AI search, it's kind of funny. I'm on AI all the time. And when you actually do, you just type, what mattress should I buy? And we show up all the time.
And yet I'm a purist. And maybe like I'm romantic about commerce and the experience of anytime a brand is creating a product that I'm going to put in or on my body, like I really want to know the brand behind it. I'm not prepared to delegate the entirety of the responsibility to an agent to go and buy that product for me. Like, I'm happy if it helps me do some of the research, but then I want to kind of do that last mile piece. And so I wonder if that's because you've cemented that reputation and you have that following. I wonder if that's a really good path for you guys to go down in terms of like leaning into agentic commerce, where it's not like I'm looking for a mattress and the agents do it all for you, and suddenly the white glove Saatva service shows up at my door and it's found that mattress for me.
I think we've been doing what we've been doing for such a long time, and we've been doing it exceptionally well. We love when our customers review us. We love when our customers comment on our Facebook remarketing. We love all of it. We're heavily reviewed. If someone wants to test out our mattress, we send it.
Yeah.
And so that strategy continues to work for us. But we also want to be technologically forward, right?
Yeah.
So if the world is changing, and we're not going to become an antiquated brand. I think that's the best thing about this. This is a company that's still sort of entrepreneurial by nature and will always be entrepreneurial and always wants to stay ahead. So we're never going to be falling by the wayside because we didn't keep up.
But it's clear that you're not cutting corners either. And I think that's really important. How do you leverage technology to deliver a better experience to your customer? How do we leverage data to bring us closer to our customer, as opposed to, it's not a race to the bottom. I'm not just trying to acquire you more cheaply. I actually want to establish a relationship with you, because you're going to spend, if someone buys one of these mattresses, they're spending a meaningful amount of their life sleeping on it. And I think like having that trust in brand is really important.
It's so critical. It's critical to past purchase. So it's critical to people buying other things from us. They like to hear from us. The catalog has expanded considerably. You can see it. I'm sitting on a chair right now.
Expanded category products. Yeah.
And so people just really, really have a lot of trust in the brand and the ability of the brand to provide just an exceptional product in every single category that we basically play in. And also, when people buy their second, third, fourth, fifth mattress, they buy from us. And so, we're hardly an impulse buy. We're a curated, purchase. And we want to be part of, someone's purchasing habits for a long time. And we should be. We feel that we really do produce a great product. I think that's one other thing, I really want to emphasize is the product speaks for itself. In every way, in every role I've ever had at Saatva, from leading marketing to strategy to whatever, it was always easy because the product was always so great, and it's something that I think differentiates us from almost any competitor that we have.
That's my whole talk track for what it means to be an iconic brand. Like, there is no such thing as an iconic brand without a wonderful product behind it. Like, customers are just too smart nowadays for that. And it's clear, being around here, that you all ascribe to that theory too. So we touched on AI a little bit, sort of like you're accidentally taking advantage of the fact that your content is great. What about like intentional use of AI within the team? Is there things that you're seeing that I know you're not as hands-on, but it feels like your hands are in a lot of these things? But like when you look around the team and the tools that they're using, have you been surprised by how effective it's been, or perhaps like slightly disillusioned by a bunch of promise, but it hasn't necessarily fulfilled on the promise?
I think it's really interesting about AI is that there's all like different levels of AI usage, right? So there's AI that helps you inform decisions and work better on a daily basis. We're 100% doing that.
Cool.
AI is part of our customer service experience. With suggested responses. AI is part of our tech stack, and our tech teams are using AI, throughout.
Write code, I imagine.
Writing code, doing all of it. Even strategically, when we're making decisions, AI, responses are something we'll at least consider. But I think that, there's another level of AI which we have not implemented, which is just integrate AI into your entire system, and that means helping you run everything from logistics to this, to various pieces. It's something that is interesting and we talk about, but it's something that just hasn't happened yet for us. We have a lot of different things going on, and it's just a massive undertaking to just all of a sudden sort of
Yeah, I mean, it requires like a complete reimagination, and I think when you've invested as much as you have in having these like great brand ethos and having the data that you have, making sure that every one of these AI components has access to that, so that it understands in whatever department how they get access to that brand DNA, like that's really important. And or I call it context, and that's hard. A lot of these systems are operating on top of siloed data, and so they're really good at a certain job, but how do you make them amazing at all of the jobs?
Talking to each other, and I don't think we're there yet in terms of the APIs that are being sent out from the existing systems that we're using. And so if the data is not perfect, and there isn't just this pure, balance back and forth between the AI and
it won't figure it out.
It won't figure it out.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse than an AI with bad data, because
no,
you end up with a bad answer. You end up with the wrong answer, and that is absolutely not what you want to do. So, we've always, again, tried to be at the forefront, but we don't want to be maybe too far ahead, right? In the history of the company, I remember there's so many different products being thrown at us, and technological products. A lot of them maybe not related to back end or marketing, but Google Glasses to the metaverse to, it goes on and on, to voice commands. And we always kind of said, we're going to take a wait and see sort of approach. And if we find it to be valuable, we'll get into it, but we're not going to just jump in at every single shiny new object. AI definitely is not a shiny new object. 100% believe it's going to change the way that we do everything. I just don't think it's there yet because of the data issues that we discussed.
I think more people need to be talking about this, because as I talk to different brand leaders, there's this feeling that everyone else has it figured out, but they don't, because parts of it are actually hard. And you see the promise right away. You work with it, you give it a decent amount of context, and it's giving you immediate value. The answers for CX are infinitely better. But you still have someone who is doing the last mile delivery or the quality check on it.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things I appreciate about these conversations is they're honest. People are we're experimenting. Parts have delivered immediate value. Other parts are really hard, and we're going to figure it out. And I think it's comforting for people to hear. If I get a bunch of leaders around a table, they're like, oh yeah, us too. That's hard. It's hard. It's hard. We're going to get there, but it's not.
It's not an overnight thing.
No, definitely not an overnight thing. All right, cool. I think that's a great place for us to wrap up. I'd love to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions that are a little bit maybe easier and fun. I walked up and down this street. This is D2C alley.
Yeah.
What's one D2C brand, or even not necessarily D2C, what's one brand today that you look to and you'd be like, they're really doing it right? Who do you find super interesting today?
For the history of time, I've always found Warby Parker to honestly be an exceptional brand. I'm sure you get that answer maybe a lot.
No, first time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Amazing. I think that they do a fantastic integration of retail and web. They probably are the closest to a totally integrated brand in general, where the web experience and the physical retail are just so interconnected. I think they've done a fantastic, now that I'm so heavily involved with omnichannel and store creation and store expansion. I think they just pick the best retail locations. We love where they are for the most part. I think sometimes they overstretch, but I know they have a lot of stretching to do. They're a public company, but I think for the most part, I think they do a really, really great job.
Great answer. And seamless tech too. The other day, one of my dogs ate my glasses. I got glasses for the first time. I'll be nearly 50, and I made it this far.
You're a young 50.
Thanks. And I fell in love with them, and they helped me to read, and they're great. And my dog ate them, and I was quite sad. And I went on the website, and they had my prescription, they had the reorder. It was just, I didn't know they were going to have it, but I kind of expected it from the brand, and it just delivered. And I could have just as easily sent them to a store and walked in and picked them up in the store. And so I think that's a great answer, and I love the integration angle. I think you're absolutely right.
And I think the ability to execute, across channel, in every capacity of the business, right? To be kind of relatively streamlined from a technology perspective, to have the marketing and branding, to sort of also do a really, really good job with physical retail. I think that's something that we do really well. I think we do everything we touch. I always say, I think we're a top-notch team that does a really good job in a lot of different areas. None of this is easy. You can't just be good at one thing. You have to be good at lots of things. I always sort of felt that the well-rounded sort of student was underrated. Everyone's saying, oh, you have to be a musician virtuoso to be really good at one thing. I think in e-commerce, you have to be good at a lot of things. And Warby does a great job at a lot of things. I think we do a great job at a lot of things.
Very wise words. You got to be great at a lot of things to create a great brand and to be great at e-commerce. Ricky, thank you so much for hosting us here today, and thanks for being a wonderful guest.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. Appreciated it. Thanks.
Great.